Time to catch up with Debrief, your quick wrap-up of TRT World's top stories from the week.
Another superstar over here.
Hi, Debrief!
Israel's constant bombardment and blockade of Gaza is creating one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. Despite this, Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz says the blockade will continue. In a post on X, he said no humanitarian aid will be allowed to enter Gaza.
If Israeli bombs don't kill them, artillery will. And if not, they'll starve to death.
Israel has carried out more attacks on the southern city of Khan Yunis as well as on Gaza City.
Israel's defense minister says attacks on Gaza will intensify unless Hamas accepts a ceasefire deal.
Hamas has confirmed that it's studying a new Israeli ceasefire proposal.
The obvious question, what is different about the ceasefire deal?
Nothing. Not in terms of what Israel wants, not in terms of what specifically Benjamin Netanyahu wants.
We're also seeing public pressure mounting, but this isn't really about, again, ending this war in Gaza. It's more about getting the hostages released.
Is it looking for the return of the hostages? I'm not so sure it is.
But there's growing discord within Israel's military ranks, where hundreds of soldiers have called for an end to the conflict. Israel had moved to dismiss a number of its reservists from its air force last week over a letter voicing dissent.
The chief of Hamas in Gaza has said that the group is ready to immediately negotiate a swap deal with all hostages and an agreed number of Palestinians jailed by Israel.
Israel has never been interested in a full and comprehensive agreement that would lead to the release of all remaining Israeli captives in the Gaza Strip and an end to the war in Gaza.
The Israeli defense minister, he has said that Israeli forces will remain in the buffer zone in any temporary or permanent agreement. So where does that leave the prospects for peace?
It was very clear from the first day of the war that the war is about ethnic cleansing and about confiscating more Palestinian land.
Netanyahu's idea is make the Middle East in Israel's image.
Hundreds of radical Israeli settlers have stormed Al-Aqsa compound in occupied East Jerusalem on the third day of the Jewish Passover holiday.
The group entered the mosque compound singing and praying, accompanied by Israeli police. Non-Muslim prayer at the mosque has been banned for centuries.
The accusations are that their behaviour inside hasn't been within those rules.
They want to delete your identity and deny your religious feelings and to provoke and humiliate you that you are nothing.
My client, Rumesa, shared with me and my fellow lawyers representing her that when she was taken...
Professors and students have held protests on campuses across the United States. They've been demonstrating against funding cuts, the detention and expulsion of international students, as well as new restrictions on making speeches about Gaza on their campuses.
Tufts University grad student Rumesa Ozturk was grabbed by masked federal agents not far from her home in Massachusetts. The Turkish-born doctoral student is legally in the U.S. and had not participated in demonstrations.
When someone is kidnapped by ICE, their life is at stake.
Then there's the detention of Mahmoud Khalil, who was active in protest at Columbia University.
This is a person who is a lawful permanent resident. This is a U.S. person. Those grounds are vague.
Palestinian student who led protests at Columbia University has been detained by immigration authorities. Mohsen Madawi was arrested at a Vermont immigration office where he was meant to be interviewed about finalizing his U.S. citizenship.
The court has decided that lawful permanent residents can have their status revoked for pro-Palestine advocacy.
The U.S. Secretary of State says hundreds of student visas have been revoked using an AI-powered program.
Free speech advocates have pointed out that this could have a really wide-ranging chilling effect.
The Trump administration is freezing more than $2.2 billion in grants to Harvard University. The Ivy League institution has refused to comply with the administration's demand to limit activism on campus.
Now, Donald Trump's standoff with Harvard University continues to escalate. The White House has threatened to remove the institution's permission to enroll foreign students.
Trump become an emperor rather than a president? Has he found a way to evade the check checks and balances in the American system?
Well, I think what we've seen in the first 3 months of the Trump administration is Trump pushing the boundaries on every aspect of presidential power.
In the US, a judge has ordered the government to answer why it hasn't brought home a man who was wrongly deported to a notorious maximum security prison in El Salvador. The judge wants the White House to explain why her order to get Kilmer Abrego Garcia back is not being followed.
Enough is enough. My family can't be robbed from another day without seeing Kilmer.
The Trump administration admits Garcia was sent to El Salvador by mistake, but continues to call him a terrorist and a gang member.
Nothing will change the fact that Abrego Garcia will never be a Maryland father. He will never live in the United States of America again.
And here's the news in brief, where we bring you even more top stories. Looks like Europe is also becoming more anti-immigrant.
As for migration, we will pursue a new approach. We will end illegal migration. There will be border checks and rejections of asylum requests.
Now, even those following the rules to seek asylum, crossing borders after dangerous journeys, are being criminalized. The rules themselves are being rewritten to shut more people out. The EU's border agency, Frontex, cheered a 30% drop in crossings compared to last year, shrugging off criticism from rights groups about the human toll, drownings, beatings, and inhumane detentions. Italy just transferred 40 migrants to detention centers it operates in Albania, and the bloc now calls several countries safe for deportation, but they aren't exactly. See ethnic tensions in Kosovo, sea levels rising in Bangladesh, armed conflict in Colombia, and more. Speaking of armed conflict, take a look at Nigeria's plateau state. Banditry by armed groups, including herders accused of trying to seize land, has left more than 100 dead and thousands displaced in a week. Farming villages like Zike have been ravaged. Homes torched and lives lost.
Some children were got born in their house to ashes. They could not even see their dead bodies.
It's part of a deadly pattern of land disputes, and locals say enough is enough, calling on President Tinubu to act.
There are growing calls for strengthened local security and policing, fair land reforms and conflict resolution systems, and accountability for perpetrators, and not just visits by top government officials for condolences.
And speaking of governments, China's done playing dumb while the West plays dress up. The Trump administration slaps tariffs and throws shade while selling flags made in China.
We borrow money from Chinese peasants to buy the things those Chinese peasants manufacture.
Luxury brands claimed they could survive the trade war by flexing brand power. Translation? Pumping up prices. But Beijing had receipts, scrapping confidentiality clauses. From Nike shoes to Hermes bags, turns out the made in Italy fantasy might be stitched in Guangzhou. It's the label that costs you, not the location or the labor. And speaking of origins, Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin is having a feminism fail that's literally out of this world. The reusable rocket company launched an all-female, mostly celebrity joyride to the edge of space, including Katy Perry and Gayle King, billing it as a historic mission that mostly involved floating around taking selfies.
You never know how much love is inside of you, like how much love you have to give. And how loved you are until the day you launch. We're all in this together. Like, that's all I could think about is like, we're so connected.
But the public didn't love the big bill. Growing global poverty and a climate crisis in full swing tanked the optics of paying tens of millions of dollars for 11 minutes in orbit. A let-them-eat-cake moment that came off as tone-deaf and in poor taste. And now for a taste of our programs.
Years, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA, has provided non-reciprocal duty-free access to the United States for certain African products. Have the new tariffs imposed by the U.S. President Donald Trump's administration killed it? Last year, South Africa topped the list as the largest exporter to the U.S. under AGOA, trading $14 billion.
The success of AGOA varies from country to country, depending on the country's export profile and the country's economic interests.
Lesotho, a country that President Donald Trump once claimed nobody has ever heard of,
is America's key trading partner and has enjoyed duty-free access to US due to the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA. It exports 75% of its textiles to the US, and as of 2024, its bilateral trade with America stood at $240.1 million at the Levi's garment factory. Workers are busy sewing and putting final touches on garments that will be exported to the United States. But all is not okay for them. The end of the trade deal between Africa and America will cost these workers their jobs.
Investing in industrial development, investing in infrastructure, eliminating intra-Africa trade and investment barriers. In the medium to long term, this is the response that we should be focusing on to enable us, as I said earlier, to build a domestic market that will be substantial enough that as a continent we don't rely on others.
US tariffs are shaking up luxury brands around the world. One of the world's largest luxury groups, LVMH, reported weaker than expected first quarter results, causing its stock to plunge significantly. Earlier this week, it lost its position as the most valuable luxury company, overtaken by Hermes.
Revenue dropped 3% in the first quarter, despite expectations of a 2% increase. The drop was driven by weakening demand in key markets, particularly China, signaling growing challenges for the whole global luxury sector. US sales, which make up nearly a quarter of the Paris-based company's profits, fell 3%. But China and nearby regions saw the steepest fall, down 11%. And it's not just LVMH. The whole luxury sector is feeling the squeeze. Kering, the parent company of Gucci, saw shares dip 2.5%, while Burberry fell 4.4%. And Richmond lost 1.6%.
Manchester United have produced a thrilling all-time classic comeback at Old Trafford after they scored twice in the final minute of extra time to beat 10-man Lyon 5-4 and reach the semi-finals of the Europa League. United blew a 2-goal lead in the second after Manuel Ugarte and Diogo Dalot's goals were cancelled out by Corentin Tolisso and Nicolas Tagliafico before Tolisso also saw red. Cue an extraordinary extra period where Ryan Cherki and Alexandre Lacazette's penalty saw Lyon go 4-2 up and United heading out. Elsewhere, Athletic Bilbao went through after beating Rangers 2-0 thanks to Oyhan Santhet's first half penalty and Nico Williams' late header. And Bode Glimt became the first Norwegian side into the last four of a men's European tournament after surviving Lazio's second leg fight back to win 3-2 on penalties. And the first legs of the semi-finals will get underway on Thursday, May the 1st, with United travelling to Athletic Bilbao's San Mamés Stadium, which will also host the final on May the 21st, while Spurs host Bode Glimt.